U.S. Route 1, south of Brunswick, Georgia, a Tuesday night in the late summer of 1955. 2 lanes of tar and gravel running flat through the pines, still warm from noon. A man in a stake-bed truck is doing 45, elbow out the window. He has driven this road since before the war. Out here you hear a car long before you see it. He hears this one wrong. It comes up behind him, low and heavy, a hard, even hammering that seems to rise out of the road itself, closing faster than anything should. Then the headlights swing wide and it is past him. Long, low, white, 3 round taillights stacked in each fender. 4 seats, a trunk, a heater. Something a bank president drives to church. And it is gone in one continuous pull, the sound thinning into the pines. He will tell people it was a Cadillac. He will be wrong. What passed him was a Chrysler. Here is the argument, stated once and then earned. The first real American muscle car was not the 1964 Pontiac GTO. It was the 1955 Chrysler C300, a factory-built race car with leather seats and a necktie, assembled out of parts Chrysler already had lying around. You have never heard of it. Not because it failed, because it won too early and in numbers far too small to remember. To understand why that car should never have existed, look at Chrysler Corporation in the middle of 1954. It was not pretty. The company had spent the post-war years building automobiles for a customer who was disappearing. Engineering first, styling second, going back to the founder. Chrysler cars were tall and narrow and sensible. You could wear a hat in one, and that was not an accident. It was a design requirement. It worked for a while because the men buying new cars in 1947 had lived through a depression and a war and did not want to be told they were frivolous. By 1954, that man had a son, and the son wanted low and long and loud. General Motors had already worked that out. Ford and Chevrolet were locked in a sales war that dragged the whole low-priced field into the ditch. Chrysler sat in the middle with its dignified sedans and watched its share of the American market fall off a cliff. The maddening part was that the engineering was superb. Chrysler had spent the war years on hemispherical combustion chambers for aircraft engines that never saw service. And in 1951, it introduced the firepower V8, the engine the world would come to call the Hemi. Valves on opposite sides of a dome, spark plug dead in the middle. It cost more to build, it weighed more, and the valve gear was a nightmare of shafts and rockers. But it made power, and it kept making power long after a wedge-head engine had quit. Briggs Cunningham, the American sportsman chasing Le Mans, dropped Cadillac power after 1951 and put the Chrysler 331 in his race cars. He finished 4th overall at Le Mans in 1952 and 5th in 1954. So the best engine in America was a proven weapon in Europe. At home, it was hauling around a hat. In the first week of August 1954, a 37-year-old engineer named Bob Rodger walked into a meeting with a proposal that had no business getting approved. Rodger was chief engineer of the Chrysler division, and his idea was simple. The corporation had the most powerful engine in America, no car worth putting it in, and no money for tooling. So do not build a new car. Build one out of the parts bin and go racing with it. The plan was so cheap it was almost insulting. Take the midsection of a New Yorker hardtop. Bolt on the entire front clip of the Imperial, which brings that heavy chrome egg crate grille with it. Rear quarters and side trim off the cheap Windsor. New Yorker in the middle, Imperial in front, Windsor at the back. Management approved it on a budget that barely registered as a program, not a moonshot. A rounding error. If that is the kind of story you came here for, take a second and subscribe. This channel runs on the men who remember these cars, because a machine assembled that way should have been a curiosity. Instead, it won just about everything there was to win in this country, and then fell out of the story entirely. How it did both is the rest of this video. The order sheet told you the rest. 3 colors, 1 interior, tan leather, 1 body style, 1 transmission. You did not configure a C300, you bought one, or you did not. The engine is where the parts bin stops. It started with the 331 cubic inch firepower Hemi, which Rodger's people did not leave alone. 2 Carter 4-barrel carburetors, 8 barrels of induction when most of America had 2. Then came the part that made it a race engine. Out went the hydraulic lifters. In went solid lifters and a full race camshaft with roughly 60 degrees of valve overlap. A profile developed for the Chrysler engines Briggs-Cunningham ran at Le Mans. That one decision is the whole argument in miniature. Solid lifters do not adjust themselves. Somebody has to set them with a feeler gauge, and get it wrong, and you burn a valve. All that overlap means the motor loafs at a stoplight and drinks fuel. It made the car worse at everything except going fast. Chrysler did it anyway and put a warranty on it. What came out the other end was 300 horsepower. That is a gross figure, SAE gross, the way everybody measured before 1972. The most powerful Packard that year made 275, and that was the closest anyone got, which is where the name came from, and it is the most honest piece of branding in American automotive history. No committee, no borrowed Italian racing acronym. The engine made 300 horsepower, so they called the car the 300. The letter C was just Chrysler's model prefix for the year. It went on sale on February 10th, 1955 at $4,109. That was 2 Chevrolet Bel Airs and change. A luxury car chassis set up like a race car and left that way on the showroom floor. 17 days later, it went to the beach. Daytona in 1955 was not a speedway. It was a beach. You did not set a car up for Daytona. You set it up for whatever Daytona had turned into by lap 30. The man who brought the Chryslers there was not from Detroit. Elmer Carl Kiekhaefer had built a failing outboard company in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, into Kiekhaefer Mercury. He was not a car man. He was an engineer and an obsessive, and he had gone racing to sell boat motors. Nothing in the sport looked like his operation. Enclosed transporters, when most teams towed on an open trailer, matching white uniforms. Soil and tire samples sent out for analysis. He ran it like a military unit, which is the phrase his own drivers used, and not affectionately. One thing gets left out. This was not a factory team. The Chrysler 300 Club is explicit about it. Kiekhaefer campaigned that fleet without financial support from the factory. The transporters, the payroll, and the hotel bills came out of an outboard motor company in Wisconsin. On February 27, 1955, 27,000 people stood in the dunes. Tim Flock put a Kiekhaefer Chrysler on the pole with the number 300 on the door. He won by 9 seconds, averaging a shade under 92 miles per hour on sand and public highway. Second was Lee Petty in another 1955 Chrysler. One wrinkle told honestly. Fireball Roberts came across the line first in a Buick and was disqualified in post-race inspection. Either the reason Flock won or a footnote, depending on who tells it. Chrysler still ran first and second 2 weeks after the car reached dealerships. Then the season proper. 45 races on the Grand National calendar, 40 of them on dirt. Cars repaired in the dark behind the grandstand. Into that came a 4,000-pound luxury hardtop wearing an Imperial grille, and it beat everything in the ruts where a heavy car is supposed to lose. Tim Flock won 18 of those races and the championship. How many the car won in total depends on who is counting, and I would rather say so than pick the biggest number. The Racing Reference Database credits the Chrysler market with 22 Grand National wins. The Chrysler 300 Club puts it at 27 across all of stock car racing. NASCAR was not the only game that year. The American Automobile Association, the AAA, ran a national stock car championship of its own. Frank Mundy won it in a Kiekhaefer Chrysler. So in its first season on sale, a parts bin special sat at the center of both national stock car championships. Not one, both. And that August, after the catastrophe at Le Mans, the AAA stopped sanctioning motorsport, which means Mundy won the last AAA stock car title there ever was. 1956 was worse for everyone else. Chrysler bored the Hemi out to 354 cubic inches, called the new car the 300B, and rated it at 340 horsepower. Buck Baker took 14 wins and the championship. That spring and summer, 4 different Kiekhaefer drivers combined to win 16 consecutive NASCAR races. 16 in a row. 70 years later, nobody has come close. Consider who lost. Ford, Chevrolet, Pontiac, and Mercury all had factory programs by then, and the Chrysler 300 Club's own account says flatly that Kiekhaefer's nearly stock cars beat the factory teams from all four. Four corporations, beaten by a car assembled out of leftover body panels to dodge a tooling bill run by a man who sold outboard motors to fishermen. There was a price, and his drivers paid it. Kiekhaefer forbade husbands and wives from staying in the same room the night before a race. Tim Flock, the reigning champion, walked out the following season and said he could not take the drill sergeant attitude any longer, that he had to quit to save his life. Fans booed his cars, and in January of 1957, Kiekhaefer walked away for good. Now, the humbling. The enemy in this story is not Ford, and it is not Chevrolet. It is time, and the way memory sorts things. Ask 10 people at a cruise night what the first muscle car was, and 9 will say the Pontiac GTO. The standard definition goes like this: an intermediate size, mass-market American car carrying the biggest engine the company had at a price a young man could reach. Under that rule, the GTO qualifies. The Chrysler, full-size and expensive, does not. Except that definition was written backward by people looking at the 1960s and working out a rule for what they were already looking at. It is not a law of nature. It is a description of a marketing segment. I will be straight with you. This is genuinely contested. The 1949 Oldsmobile Rocket 88 has its own case, and it is a good one. Oldsmobile dropped a new overhead valve V8 into a lighter body and won 6 of the 9 NASCAR races that first season. But the Rocket 88 made 135 horsepower. It was a good engine in a light car. Nobody at Oldsmobile put a racing camshaft in it and sold it to the public. Chrysler did. It took a production car, fitted the most advanced engine in the corporation, and pushed it past the point of civility. Solid lifters, a Le Mans camshaft, twin 4-barrels. It sold the result to the public with a payment book. Engine first, comfort second, and let the customer sort it out. That is the recipe, and every muscle car that came afterward followed it. The GTO ran it in 1964 in a Tempest. Chrysler ran it 9 years earlier by taking a luxury car and deliberately making it worse to live with in exchange for speed. So, the answer to the question I left hanging. Chrysler built 1,725 C300s. Pontiac sold 32,450 GTOs in the first year alone. 19 GTOs for every Chrysler that ever existed. And $4,109 did not buy a 17-year-old his first car. It bought a doctor his second one. A GTO was a $295 option box. American car legend is not written by men who already have money. It is written by kids in driveways with their father's tools. The car did not lose. It got filed in the wrong drawer. The sport that made it famous moved out from under it too. In 1957, after a stock car went into a grandstand and hurt spectators, the Automobile Manufacturers Association adopted a ban on factory-supported racing, and Detroit officially got out of the business of going fast in public. The beach course closed. What happened on that sand became a story old men told each other. The letter cars kept coming, one a year, and the numbers kept sliding. The killing blow came from inside the building. In 1962, Chrysler began selling a car called simply the 300, no letter, available to anybody. And within a few years, everything that made a letter car special could be had down the hall for less. The last one was built for 1965, the year the GTO hit its second season, and the Mustang finished its first. One name stayed on the engineering documents through all of it. Bob Rodger ran the letter series as its chief engineer for the whole 11-year run. The 37-year-old who walked into that room in 1954 spent the next decade looking after what he started, while the world quietly stopped paying attention. There is no biography on the shelf beside the ones about DeLorean and Shelby and Iacocca. There is a run of automobiles and a number on a trunk lid. The Chrysler 300 Club estimates that something like 8% of them are still with us. Auction records compiled by Classic.com put the average sale of one at around $45,000. Hold that against a 1971 Hemi Cuda convertible, of which Chrysler built a comparable handful, and which trades in the millions. Same corporation, Same combustion chamber, more or less. One of them is a religion. The other is a car your grandfather's boss drove that beat the entire American racing establishment and that almost nobody at a Sunday car show can identify. The first real American muscle car was not a Pontiac, and it was not built in 1964. It was a Chrysler, built in 1955 out of 3 other Chryslers, with a Le Mans camshaft and a name that was nothing but its own horsepower rating written across the trunk lid. It did not lose to the GTO. It lost to arithmetic. So tell me where you land. The 1955 Chrysler, the 1949 Rocket 88, or the 1964 GTO, and are you willing to defend it? And if one of these ever came past you on a 2-lane at night, I would like to hear about it. Leave it below.